Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that lovely introduction. So I'm Rachel Burley. As Simon said, I'm the VP for Open Publishing Innovations at Springer Nature, and I've got the pleasure of kicking off this Forcing the Flip session. Just wanted to say thank you for the invitation. So just very quickly to start off with, I'm just going to take 10-15 minutes to introduce the publisher perspective. But just wanted to say right up front that my organisation is obviously clearly committed to becoming more open. This is our mission statement, and we recognise that it's for the good of the research community, and we're trying to do everything we can to help make that a reality. But we'll come on to some of the challenges with that. So when I was invited to join this panel, my first thought was that the title of the panel was kind of amusing, because publishers have sort of created this term flipping, meaning to flip journals from subscription or hybrid to open access. And it occurred to me that, just even the word flip means very fast and very simple, and people think about something that, it just happens overnight, like the flick of a switch. But I've been in publishing for some time, and I see many people in the room who have as well, and there is nothing fast or simple about flipping journals, never mind whole portfolios. So I think it's sort of, probably we're talking more about a transformation than a flip, and as we know, that's not instantaneous. So it's an interesting time to be in publishing. There's a lot of factors that have brought us to this point where many of us feel under pressure to come up with a solution for a wholesale flip. I certainly do. It's sort of the idea that, well, why haven't you done it yet? And there's a number of factors, and it's not just things like, dare I say, Plan S, the S word. But there are other factors that are in the environment that have brought us to this point, and things like the countrywide deals like Project Beale, our friends at funders who have funder policies that are mandating or encouraging full open access, OA 2020, and then also sort of pirate sites giving free access to our content. So it's very much an environment where you sort of wake up to this every day, is, this feeling that we need to be doing something. So we've been, I won't talk too much about what we've done, because it's been, we've probably talked about that in the press and so on, and that's not what this session is for, but we have spent quite a lot of time taking a variety of approaches to make this happen and to make it happen quickly. We've got 4 countries where we now have over 70% of our content in those countries published Gold OA. And, we have other initiatives, a huge OA portfolio, 2,000 hybrid journals. So we feel like we've put our eggs in a lot of baskets to help to become more open. And a lot of these initiatives have made some progress, but the question is, what more can we do? And then beyond open access, other initiatives just shown here around open data and sort of initiatives giving people access to content. But actually, the question for most of us is, what are the issues for publishers? Everybody I've spoken to over the last couple of days has a slightly different perspective on this. Here's mine. So I think it's essentially, our core issues around the fact that there is just no single author mandate or policy that covers every global region or every discipline. So author preference really is the demand side of the equation, and as we've seen, not all authors elect to choose open access even when it's available. So it's quite hard if your core customer base are not selecting that routinely to force a flip into that model. It's also just the regional variances, which we're all well aware of, and we've talked about them before, but it is very hard when you're trying to cater as a publisher to lots of different mandates and policies, because you find that you're focusing your attention and effort and investment on multiple projects to keep lots of different stakeholders happy, and that could be a distraction, because it would be so nice and easy if there was just one global policy and everybody agreed on it, then we'd all be working towards that. As we know, not all journal content is primary research. Many of us have journals that have content that's either news or reviews, or, there's a lot of other content, certainly in some of our selective journals, that wouldn't be covered by APCs. And then I think one of the big concerns for a lot of us around a wholesale flip is just the fact that the current infrastructure is quite ingrained and it's quite settled in, and I think most of us have invested in our hybrid program. So we've put a lot of effort into trying to make that the tool for transition. And I think, there are many journals that just wouldn't make a rapid and sudden flip to a completely open model. And then we really have to ask ourselves, how much damage would it do to those journals, and what important role do they play in their communities? So this is really, I think, the crux of, and I really want to hear as well from my co-panelists and from others in the room about this, but this is really what's stopping us from just flicking the switch, in my opinion. But what else can we be doing? So I don't think, given all of these circumstances and all of the issues we're facing, there is still more that we can be doing. And I wanted to just talk for a few minutes about this, which is Stephen Inchcombe, our Chief Publishing Officer, was interviewed a couple of weeks ago and mentioned, and this also went into our Plan S submission, that one of the things we're thinking about is early sharing and how we can encourage that. So this is something that we've been thinking about. How can we drive the uptake and the use and the usefulness of preprints, pre-publication? So most people in the biologies and healthcare fields have been thinking about this a lot more since 2013 than they were before. The rise of preprints, it's quite, you've seen this chart before. This is from prepub.org, I think, and is regularly updated. But it's been an astonishing growth since 2013 when bioRxiv launched, and really the last couple of years where they've been incredibly successful. And the last set of data I saw, they had 2,500 submissions, I think, in March, which is just astonishing, and this graph says it all. However, when you look at what that means as a percentage of the literature, the picture is just a little bit different. So there was, in March, articles that were pre-printed represented about 1.8% of all the research that was in PubMed. So this is really small, and this is where we're thinking that we want to really try to do a bit more around early sharing. So one way of doing that is, instead of waiting for people to preprint and then submit to a journal, is to do it the other way around. So our approach is that we're going to be encouraging preprinting on submission to our journals, and we've been piloting this since October with some open access journals, and the uptake has been incredibly high. So rather than the 2.8% or the 1.8% we saw on the previous slide, the percentage is nearer to 50%. And it turns out that, authors are quite willing to share their research if they can see the benefit of doing so, and if it's made very easy for them, if they can just click a button on submission to a journal and someone else takes care of it for them. So this service we launched, it's called In Review. We launched it in partnership with Research Square, and it's their platform, not ours. But essentially, on submission to the journals, 50% of authors are opting in. We create a preprint for them, and then they also have, alongside that, a peer review timeline, which you can sort of see on the right-hand side of the screen there. But they can, in real time, along with the rest of the world, track the progress of that manuscript through peer review. It has a basic integrity check, so plagiarism, language, ethics, human images, just to make sure that we're not putting anything that we may later have to take down. And this has been a sort of bit of game changer for us, because we hadn't recognized that the black box of peer review was such a huge frustration for authors. I think we knew it, but we perhaps weren't listening to it as closely as we should. But what we found from this is that the fact that authors can actually see that in some cases we've invited 15 peer reviewers and none of them took up the offer, they're less angry with us actually as publishers if we've been a bit slow when they can see that. So I think a big benefit of this is not just the ability to share and have a DRI and get your research out while it's under peer review, but also just to see exactly what the status of the manuscript is. It does have a private author dashboard as well, which they can suggest reviewers through. And the unique thing about this is that if the manuscript is subsequently rejected by the journal it's submitted to, then the journal branding will be removed and it reverts to being a preprint, which then will give this author the opportunity to submit it somewhere else. So this is one of the ways that we believe that we can just encourage more upfront and early sharing. It's very early days. We just have 12 journals at the moment, but we will be rolling this out across a lot more of our journals this year. So this sort of, to round off really, I just wanted to talk a little bit about models, because, with the session being called Forcing the Flip, we tend to think about flipping from hybrid to or subscription to open access. But actually, fundamentally, one of the things that I spent quite some of my time thinking about is just the fact that the revenue model at the moment is very closely aligned to the Finnish article. So I know all of you know this, but when I was putting this together, I was thinking of the funnel approach, which is that if you look at the amount of submissions that come into most journals, by the time those things get to acceptance or publication, which is where the monetization happens, there's a lot of other stuff that's been filtered out. And as we know, our costs are spread throughout the process. So we've got our revenue at accept or publish, whereas actually the costs for publishers are all the way through the process. And they're not insignificant. I've been very closely involved in looking at what happens when you need to QC check thousands and thousands of submissions, and it's a lot of work. So this is I think this is something for us to think about, because there has been talk about platforms and services, and I don't think it's anywhere near yet being an alternative model. But I do want to think about this, because if you were to think of this as Springer Nature's pipeline, this submissions part on the far left side is 1 million a year to our journals. And the other, in the revenue end, at the other end, is about 320,000. So we're looking at a pipeline here where we have handled in one way or another 700,000 manuscripts that didn't get published. And I think just thinking about how you can align revenues with costs is something else that we probably, as the publishers in the room, need to be thinking about. So really, I don't want to take more than my allotted time. So I just want to wrap up by saying thank you for your attention, and I'm hoping that we get some good questions at the end of the session to continue the discussion. Thank you.